Our speaker today is the archivist here at Wabash College. She is a graduate of Purdue University with a degree in public relations. She also has 4 children and is married to Jim Swift, who was raised on this campus as a faculty kid. She's also involved in many community organizations, some connected with history and some not. Her latest project has been directing the show The Women at the Vandy Theater, which has its opening tomorrow night. With a chapel talk entitled Thoughts on Our History, please welcome Beth Swift.
First of all, I would like to say what an honor it is to be asked to deliver a chapel talk. Thank you to the Sphinx Club for the invitation. Today I would like to speak about Wabash past and present. No surprise, since that's what I work on every day in the archives. To my mind, perhaps the best speech ever given on the history of Wabash was delivered by Bill Plaker at the college sesquicentennial. Bill always had a way of telling a story while also sharing a lesson in humanity. In his speech called A College's Use of Its Past, he cautions us not to use the past for decorative purposes. To Bill, our history was not an abstraction, but a living, breathing legacy. If you can, get a copy of it. It's worth reading. As your archivist, I see so much of the history of this small school. I see it across time and peopled with some amazing folks and some rascals as well. I see our founding as the day-to-day struggle of a few poor members of the Presbyterian clergy in a place that was still a wilderness. When our first president, Elihu Baldwin, left New York to assume the office here, his dearest friend had Baldwin's portrait painted by his brother, as he would sure he would never see his dear friend again. This portrait, painted by Samuel F.B. Morse, better known for his invention of the telegraph, hangs in President White's office today. Baldwin's friend was right, by the way. Our first president did die in service to this small college. He became very ill following a fundraising trip to northern Indiana and died shortly thereafter. In the 1830s, Indiana was still wild, full of perils, and the life expectancy was as low as the general educational levels. In fact, this area was so full of trials and hardships that our founders thought that the only way to assure a steady supply of preachers and teachers was to found a college in the Wabash country to educate the locals. I should add that this is the source of our name, as all of this part of our state drains to the Wabash River. We still educate preachers and teachers and a good many men from the area. And 175 years of history have created many strong traditions. And boy, do we love traditions here at Wabash. There are loads of things that we do because someone did it before and said it was a tradition. There are some things perceived as tradition because it has been that way for the previous 4 years. You will leave Wabash supposing many of those things that you did are traditional when in fact they are new, relatively speaking. The perfect example of this is our current Chapel Sing. For decades, Chapel Sing was held as an every man for himself event. Each freshman was required to learn Dear Old Wabash and to sing it alone with all the members of his incoming class. This has changed, and now the sing is as a group and no W haircuts are given. When I started at Wabash, the first chapel sing that I saw consisted of groups linking their arms and screaming their throats raw, sometimes to the point of ruptures. When this was changed, and rightly, I think, to its current form, there were outcries from students who were sure that Big T tradition was dead. In fact, chapel sing now is much more like those of long ago. So change is a constant in the history of this place, yet there are many things that stay the same. Wabash is still all male and is still a small college. We are still powerfully passionate about our athletic teams. We still always fight. And a note here about our motto. It was coined by Ed Signer, class of 1910. Ed was one of the first bachelor editors. As bachelor editors still know, putting out a quality paper while doing all the other things required is sometimes quite a fight. The motto was presented to the local alumni association by Rome Ike Williams, a member of the original Little Giants team. This team knew what it meant to always fight, as they were always the underdog, yet they kept going and truly earned their name. Wabash has also always been a school known for its academic rigor. As every freshman knows, it takes a while to get your feet under you here. The faculty challenges all of you to do your best, to perform like academic little giants. Over the long hours of studying amidst the noise of your dorm room or fraternity house, you continue to live up to the expectations of a Wabash man. You study hard, you play hard, and you learn the value of meaningful, substantive, and respectful dialogue. And this has not changed over the course of our history. Which brings me to my next point. I'm so often amazed by the similarities in our current students and all of those who have come here before. Sure, you guys are technologically savvy. You have access to information from all over the world. Yet, you come to us as boys and grow into men. Here you meet others from near and far away. You make friendships that last a lifetime. You all have favorite and not so favorite professors. You all care deeply about your future. What will I do, where, and how? These are still questions asked daily at Wabash. Men of Wabash have always had these experiences. All Wabash men share a legacy with those men of another era, with those professors from a long time ago, indeed with all of the bits that make up this place we call Wabash. You are, to use this phrase yet again, standing on the shoulders of giants. You are privileged to study, live, and work here at this college. In most cases, you are here because someone who came before you felt so passionately that Wabash changed their lives that they gave of their time, talent, or treasure to make sure that other young men who came after could attend with little regard for the ability to pay full price. Thousands of men before you struggled to pay their way. That too has not changed, although the jobs on campus have. There are no S jobs shoveling coal for the furnaces or for Center Hall bell ringers. There are no organ scholarships, and I believe that David Blix was the last student to receive a scholarship to serve as college organist. Times have changed, and yet there have always been enterprising young men like the recent student running a mail order company from his dorm room, or the guys who started the Scarlet Inn. In the early 1920s, there was no food service on campus. Students ate at their fraternity, in cheap restaurants downtown, or at the boarding houses where the independent men lived. All of these dining options were fairly limited. A few enterprising students in need of money to pay for school leased a room in Forest Hall, when it sat where the Spark Center is now, called it the Scarlet Inn, and put together sandwiches for delivery late at night. Their business was a hit, and when these guys graduated, a woman from town took over the business and continued it. So you all share this history. It's yours, and as with just about everything worthy, it carries responsibilities. Always remember that whatever a man from Wabash does, no matter where he does it, reflects back on all of Wabash. It becomes a part of the history. Wabash's mission statement charges us all to think critically, act responsibly, lead effectively, and live humanely. This applies just as the gentleman's rule does, both on and off the campus. By the way, it's always delighted me that our mission statement was crafted by a poet. It does have poetry in it, and yet it is down to earth and succinct. Just about the perfect recipe for a full and productive life. Speaking of the gentleman's rule, it is often evoked to prove a point, but more often lamented as an anachronism, a notion that belongs to an earlier time. I'm often asked about the rule as it evolved over time. The gentleman's rule developed out of the view that our students knew what it meant to be gentlemen, and thus were clear about the expectations. The rule really came into full use as the single code during the deanship of George Valentine Kendall in the 1920s and 30s. It was Dean Kendall's notion that young men of your age knew how to behave, and he expected nothing less. If you were in violation of the rule in any way, punishment was simple and direct. You were expelled, and that was the end of it. Byron Trippett, Wabash class of 1930 and former president, defined the rule to a group gathered on campus for a fraternity life conference in 1956. If student behavior, individual or group, brings the good name of the college into public disrepute, pretty simple, and yet we seem to want to make it more complicated. Again, if student behavior, individual or group, brings the good name of the college into public disrepute. What I love about this is the end piece of that quote, the good name of the college, because you see the combined work and efforts of all those men and women who came before you have created this good name, this view of Wabash as a special place. So when that good name is brought into disrepute, it's not just the Wabash of today that suffers. It's also the Wabash of yesterday and the Wabash of tomorrow that suffers. In his book, Wabash on My Mind, Tribbett provides a great description of both Kendall and the Gentleman's Rule. I would highly recommend this if you are at all interested in the history of the rule. Wabash on My Mind is one man's view and reads rather like an oral history of the college. There are many other sources in the archives if you are interested enough to visit us in the basement of the Lilly Library. One thing that has been a huge help to me in my work as archivist is new technology. 15 years ago, if you wanted to see, read, or hear something from the archives, personal visit was the only way to do it. Now we have digital image projects available off of the library homepage. We even have old films on the Wabash YouTube channel. I've always maintained that the hardest part of my job is capturing the essence of student life on campus over time. We have thousands of old pictures, all of the old bachelors and magazines, but this past fall, I had an experience that was beyond cool. In the course of expanding into the basement computer lab, we were required to move a great many things. Among those items moved were our old films. In passing, I mentioned to Adam Bowen in the Media Center how neat it would be if we could capture that content in some fashion. Adam made some inquiries and found an old projector on campus that allowed these movies to be seen. He called me over to the Media Center, and there on the wall, I saw the history move. Right in front of me was Wabash in 1928 moving. Always before that, this period was captured in static photos along and never had real life. So there on the wall, I saw the history move, and I heard the noise that so many of us from another generation remember, the click of a film projector as it runs through the machine. The image flickered, and there I was outside of chapel in 1928, watching the gentleman waiting in line to go into the mandatory chapel service. Such a cool day. Adam filmed the movie as it played, capturing the movement, and posted it on YouTube. If you go to the Wabash YouTube site on the college's homepage, check out the place called From the Vault. I'm often called upon to do presentations on the history of Wabash, and I love these because they give me the chance to tell stories about this place. While working on a presentation, I came across a very old cyanotype. Really, it means a very old, very fragile photograph that is all blue or cyan. Anyway, this photo was at the old Hovey Museum here on campus. This museum was where the armory is now and was pulled down to build the armory. The museum had a magnificent teaching collection of botanical specimens, rocks, fossils, and all sorts of odds and ends. By scanning this photo, I accomplished two goals at once. The original now rests in the dark, and I could share it for my presentations. A little, well, big, really, bonus of this process was that I can now zoom in 400%. Because this photo was still so clear, even after more than 100 years, I could see the contents of the cases in the background. It was like walking into the room. As you can see, I love my work. I enjoy the challenges I meet each day. I enjoy the men I encounter in the pages of history. I enjoy untangling history's mysteries. I'm also always taken with the degree to which those connected to this college feel a deep and abiding love for Wabash. President Tribbett is one of those who had a lifelong love affair with Wabash. At his inaugural in 1956, he said, "There is a poetic quality about such a college. Its poetry is in its past. It is in the fact that for a century and a quarter, students and teachers, trustees and friends, much like ourselves, have studied and played and worked and worshiped here." When Dean Kendall retired in 1957, he had served on nearly every committee, had even been acting president for a time. It was said that if a member of the faculty found himself in opposition to Kendall, they would re-examine their position to see what they might have missed. Described as the most civilized man I ever met, Kendall loved this place so much that he moved to the East Coast to give his former student, Byron Tribbett, room to build his own administration. In letters that follow his move, he speaks often about how much he misses Wabash. I remember sitting in the balcony of this chapel for Dick Ristein's chapel talk for the 175th anniversary. As always, when Dick spoke, his lifelong love for this little place shone through. Dick served Wabash his whole life, as did his family before him, all the way back to the founders. Dick liked to say that he had shaken the hands of the men who had shaken the hand of Caleb Mills. Now that's history. I would like to close with some words about Wabash from two of our former presidents. President Kane spoke these words at his inaugural in 1900, which was incidentally the first time that Dear Old Wabash was performed in public. Kane said, "The historic college is built on the idea that its work is to educate men, not simply to educate the intellect, nor to train the hand, but to educate the man himself. Its aim is not to make specialists, but to make men." President Hopkins was an amazing change agent at Wabash, and in his inaugural of 1926, he said, "May we in turn keep the faith and assist those whom we admit to our institution in their intellectual development. May we inspire them to right living. May we encourage them to search for the truth and reveal to them the significance of the message, that the truth shall make them free." And though these are just a few examples, there are thousands of men and women who feel this way. This small college has a way of growing on you, as it has on me. Thank you.
A few quick announcements. The annual Wabash vs. DePaul blood drive is going on right now until 5 p.m. this afternoon in the Goodrich room of the library. Stop by and give blood to support APO and beat the Dannies. Immediately following chapel, there will be a talk entitled "Are Wabash Men More Masculine Than DePauls?" given by Daniel King and Dr. Bost in Baxter 114, and that'll start about 12:15. Baseball team has a home series against Denison this weekend. Both games start at 1 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. There's a lacrosse game this afternoon at 5:30 at DePaul, and TGIF will be tomorrow at Theta Delt at 4:15. Let's all rise and sing Old Wabash.